Welcome to the Vision Podcast, presented by Our Vision Caribbean and Latino Film Festival 2025 edition. On today's show, Marie Kellier, visionary, trailblazer, and founder of LA Carnival, with your host, Charles Alene.
I want to welcome everyone to the show, the Our Vision Caribbean Latino Filmmaker Podcast. Today we have a very, very honored guest, a very special guest, Marie Keller. And Marie is the president of the LA Carnival. Marie, you want to introduce yourself and tell us a little bit about yourself?
Yeah, sure. First of all, thank you both for having me on the show. It's an honor to have been considered. And so it's my pleasure to be here. My name is Marie Kellier, and I am from a little village in Jamaica named Hopewell. And it's about 10 miles or so from Montego Bay, which is better known. I've been in the US many, many years, went to UCLA, got my bachelor's in theater arts, and then followed that up with a master's in film and television production. I currently work primarily in the arts and culture space, not so much inside the film and television industry. I went in there and I didn't quite like the vibes. So I got out and kind of did, now what I'm really happy doing, which is bringing people together around culture and healthy spaces.
Ooh, cool, man. That's very impressive resume you have there. So I'm glad to be talking to you. But you stated in your introduction, you talked about, you had masters in film and you went into the industry and you didn't like that. What was that like for you going into the film industry? Well, what were some of the barriers?
Yeah, I'm not even sure I saw them as necessarily barriers, because I'm from Jamaica, and barriers are just temporary things that you overcome, right? But what I did not like was the vibes, around the industry. It was very white male dominated at the time. It still is, but then was even more so. And you get kind of looked over a lot. You get, you become sort of invisible. And there were times when I was, trying to do my job, and, people would just pass me and do my job for me, assuming, of course, I assumed they thought I wasn't able to do it. And so after a little bit of that, it's like, okay, I guess I want to do something more fulfilling, But if I really was passionate about being in that industry, I would be. But that clearly was not my passion.
So I'm a huge fan of discovering when the universe has more to offer than you have dreamed. You recognize that you were somewhat invisible in the industry. A lot of young people say, my dream is, to be in movies, or my dream is to be in TV shows, but they're not aware that there are things out there that they haven't imagined that might even be more fulfilling for their dream. Right. How were you able to make that connection that, I think there's more from me than just being looked over here in film and television?
Well, that basically started when I was quite young in Jamaica. As I said, I was actually born in Kingston, the capital of Jamaica, but I grew up with my extended family, my grandparents, which is pretty common in Jamaica, in another part of the country. And in that area, we basically had a lot of, I didn't know it at the time, but they were like community artists and performers and so on. And so we would sit around at night and really have these kind of duppy stories, which is, stories for spirits, about ghosts and spirit. They scared you half to death most of the times. But what I ended up kind of learning to do was to sort of operate in an open community space. And as I became older and went to high school, I followed that up with, forming the drama club and doing all sorts of kind of that sort of work. When I went to UCLA, I again realized that my culture, my people were not recognized. They were not visible again. And so I started, the first festival I ever did was on the campus of UCLA. And it was a Caribbean Arts and Culture Festival or something. I forgot the exact name. But that gave me a lot more fulfillment, in terms of just being able to gather people who were interested in our culture, people who were of our culture. And so that became more pronounced as I got more into the community, where I then followed that up by organizing community-based events and, just working with different cultures, different nationalities. And I found that to be much more nurturing, for my art and for my own sensibility than, being kind of in the industry per se. I'm not sure if that was the question, but.
No, that was really good. That was really good. I even, as a Barbadian myself, when you use the word duppies, I haven't heard that in so long, So it's like it sort of brought me back into the culture right there, as a ghost, we call ghost duppies, So
right.
It was interesting to hear that word. So to fast forward now, you started. How did the LA Carnival Festival and Art Show came about? What was the genesis for that?
Again, now that I'm actually speaking about this, I'm realizing that I seem to have been operating from a space of, if you don't see me, then I need to improve my visibility. It seems as how I've been working, because LA Carnival really started out when the first festival, or one of the first festivals that I did, was at Barnsdall Art Gallery in Hollywood. And so the year I did that festival, there's a friend of mine who he was my partner during the festival. And then in the middle of the festival, he said he couldn't stay for until the actual event, not the festival, in the middle of the preparation, the pre-production. And so I said, well, why? What, you can't just leave me hanging. And so, I got to go to Carnival. So I'm like, where? He was going to some other city to Carnival. So I'm like, dang, why? Let's have our own Carnival so you don't have to leave me in the middle of a production. And so that is literally how it started. His name is Keith. I don't want to say his last name, but his name is Keith. He's also from Barbados, very good friend of mine. And so Keith left, went off to his Carnival, and I was there, we did the festival. And then the next year I decided, okay, I want to make sure Keith stays and finishes this festival, because I wanted it to be an ongoing event. So I said, well, let's add a Carnival to this event. So it's like, well, I don't know, because I don't know anything about Carnival. Neither of us knew anything about putting on a Carnival. And so we went ahead. I did the footwork, did the research, talked to people, look at different carnivals, around the US, and so that's literally how it started. And so we started at Barnsdall in Hollywood. We were supposed to go down to Hollywood Boulevard the following couple of years. That was the plan. However, we got an invitation from Westchester. At that time, my office was in Westchester in California. I know there's a Westchester in New York somewhere, but this one is in California. And so the council person at that time, Ruth Galanter is her name. I'm not even sure if she's still with us, but Ruth Galanter, they wanted to add a little bit more, I guess, diversity and color to the community, which is predominantly a white Caucasian community. And so they invited us to come to Westchester. Oh, I know what preceded that. There was an earthquake. I think, I'm not sure if it was a Northridge earthquake, but there was a huge earthquake. And so Barnsdall was damaged and it closed. We couldn't do the carnival there. And so we thought about going to Griffith Park. We were invited to go to Griffith Park. But because my office was in Westchester, I said, let me do Westchester. And so they gave us a lot of support, in the beginning. So that's basically how LA Carnival, the trajectory, so to speak, of LA Carnival from Hollywood. We kind of had to leave because of the earthquake. And so we went to Westchester because we were having more support in Westchester. And we stayed in Westchester for 17 years while LA Carnival grew and developed. Yeah.
How was the relationship with like politicians in terms of getting like permits, and how did you go about, having them giving you permits to have the carnival? What was that like? Was it a uphill battle, or I know some of it you just stated, but I'm looking at the nitty-gritty of it where you had to pick up that phone, call politicians, get your permits. How did that whole thing play out?
Well, actually, we did not have a lot of problems with the permits. We got a lot of support, primarily from the City of Los Angeles Department of Cultural Affairs. There was a gentleman, and I've been trying to remember his name, I can't remember his name, but he was very instrumental. In fact, he was the one who gave us a lot of support for when we did it in Barnsdall. They gave us most of in kind. They gave us a stage. They processed the permits for us. They help us put everything in place logistically so that we could have the event. Now, when we moved to Westchester, we started we did all the stuff ourselves, but we got a lot of support as well. There is a fire marshal named Inspector Neely. He was so helpful. He came to our office. As I said, my office was in Westchester at the time. He came to the office, sat with us, walked us through, what we needed to do. The council office sent out invitations and information for us. They gave us, again, we got a lot of infrastructure support, for the event. So we didn't really have, LAPD was extremely helpful. So we really did not have a lot of struggles in terms of those things. We didn't quite know exactly what we were doing, doing this thing for the first time, especially when we moved from Hollywood to Westchester, because in Hollywood we had kind of a little cushion, we were like sort of cushioned and brought in and not really brought in, we were there, but we were supported. We felt like we were in a little cocoon. So when we moved to Westchester, that cocoon sort of kind of dissolved around us, and we had to go into the real world, so to speak, to deal with all the different authorities. We had to get food permits for all our vendors. We had to get, the fire permits. We had to get the street closure permits. We had to get the building and safety permits. There's a whole host of logistics that you have to have in place. Otherwise, you get shut down. And thank God we've never, not had our stuff together, and we've never been shut down by the authorities for anything that we didn't have in place. So to answer your question, we had a lot of support. And, doing our own homework, we were able to get everything that we needed to get done in terms of permits.
So cool. I've always wanted to go to this type of carnival, but I have never been. So tell us a bit more about the history of Caribbean carnivals and their cultural practices and traditions.
That's kind of a big question. Because Carnival goes back, beyond the Caribbean, although there are some Caribbean communities who believe that they own Carnival, which is a really not true, because Carnival actually started out, it's connected to the whole to religion, to Lent, and to the whole Ash Wednesday and so on. If you think about, like, let's say New Orleans, where they have the Mardi Gras, you have Fat Tuesday, which is a big day. You have the Sunday, which is a big day. So Carnival it takes different forms. In terms of the Caribbean, I would say the Trinidad and Tobago has really kind of really taken the practice of Carnival in the Caribbean to a whole new level. They are, really undisputably the most prominent in terms of Caribbean style carnivals. But you have most Caribbean islands have some type of carnival. You have, Barbados is what's it called in Barbados again?
Crop over.
Crop over, right?
Yeah.
Crop over in Barbados.
Yeah.
Jamaica came late to the carnival game. And so, but now we have a huge carnival in Jamaica. And so it takes different forms and different structures. The one that we are most, LA Carnival is most closely aligned with, or not really aligned, but we're similar to, is the Trinidad and Tobago style carnival, where you have the trucks on the road and the music trucks and the revelers and masqueraders and so on behind the music. But we wanted to do our carnival a little bit differently. We wanted it to be a more cultural, in addition to the typical sort of carnival vibe. We also wanted to represent as many cultures as we could within the Los Angeles area, because as it's called, as you know, LA Carnival. And when we were coming up with a name, there was a lot of pushback, because the people working with me wanted it to be the Caribbean Carnival or LA Caribbean Carnival, or, so I'm not, no, it's not just for the Caribbean, it's a LA people, the people of LA. That's a carnival that we want to make. So that's sort of the genesis of it, and how in terms of, I said, the whole historical aspect of it, that's a much more detailed answer that I don't want to take on right now, because I haven't done the top of the head, research, speaking points in order to kind of address that accurately. So that's kind of my response to that.
So, when I think of Carnival, and let me just go back 1 second. You said, like, when you talk about the Carnival in New Orleans, there's like a whole week of stuff leading up to the Carnival itself. Do you have stuff that you do? Is it a whole week, or is it just one day for the LA Carnival?
Well, it started out as a whole week of events. It's what's called still as Caracabella, which is Caribbean Cultural and Business Expositions. So we wanted it to be about business. We wanted it to be about being involved in the community. We wanted it to be about, entertainment, about music. And so we initially started with the first week being a business expo. And so we brought up people from Jamaica. We brought up Muta Baruka 1 year. We invited former First Lady, Mrs. Beverly Manley. We invited, politicians. So we wanted to have that, the ambassador for Jamaica came at one time, and, so we had that business structure in the beginning. Following the business of doing business for the Caribbean with the Caribbean, we went into the schools during the week. We started out on Friday of the previous week. We had a kind of opening event, gala event. Then on the Saturday, we had the business meeting, the business conference. And then on the Sunday, we started out with the other activities. During the week leading up to the actual on the street carnival, we went into schools and community centers. We did workshops. We taught people how to make carnival costumes, like the one behind me. We taught how to do the hats. We did, just cultural exchanges. And then the culminating activity was the street carnival that is more well-known. So that's how we started out with the LA Carnival. It changed over the period of time that we did it, so I can talk about that a little bit more if you wish, but I'll leave that as my answer for now.
All right, so do you have any, like what I was going to say, when I think of carnivals, the number one carnival that comes to my mind is in Brazil, right?
Yes, absolutely.
Do you guys share any relationship or any do you take anything from that carnival to put it into your carnival? Does that inspire you in any way? Because I think that's the biggest in the world. Am I correct? I'm not.
I think so, but I'm not 100% correct. I mean, I'm not 100% sure if that's correct. But it is the most well-known, it is definitely one of the biggest, if not the biggest. And to address what you ask, we do take information, we do take ideas and so on, and try to implement some of those ideas. We did not get as close a relationship as we kind of wanted with the Brazilian Carnival community. I'm really not quite sure why. We have a couple of friends who worked with us on and off, but it never sort of became, kind of this kind of blended activity between these two cultures. And I'm not quite sure why, but we're still working. We're still going to be, trying to get that connection.
Wow. I mean, that's good. So what does it look like today? And if I'm coming to the festival, this, would it be in 24 or 20 or 2024,
June,
right? Yes. And what's the date and what does that look like? What's the festival look like this year?
For 2024, we have totally changed. Well, I have to give you a little bit of
that's good. That's why that's cool. Because that's cool.
We when we were in Westchester, we were doing it, because the majority of the bands, the groups that participated were primarily, the biggest bands were from Trinidad, with Trinidad and Tobago band leaders. Then we had, Barbados, we had all the different islands who participated. And so although our concept was to have a more culturally rich carnival, a multiculturally rich carnival, I should say. The way it evolved while we were in Westchester was primarily on the style of Trinidad and Tobago Carnival, because those are the biggest bands and the majority ruled at that time. So and there was always a sort of a butting heads in terms of where we wanted to take, we meaning myself and the people who were of the same mindset, where we wanted to take the event and where the Trinidadian contingents wanted to take the event. And so in moving from Westchester, we decided that we decided to move to Leimert Park. And because over the years, we had gotten lots and lots of requests to bring the event to Leimert Park area, to Crenshaw, Leimert Park area. At first, we kind of resisted it because we felt that that the area wasn't really ready for what we wanted to do. And we felt that we were not getting the level of actual support, to be able to move the carnival. It's a very expensive process to be able to get all the things that we needed to have in place. We were not getting that level of support, although we did get a lot of moral support. We did get a lot of requests. People were, interested in us bringing it there. So when we eventually did bring it there, this was 2020 where we were supposed to launch. Of course, 2020, 21, 22, and even 23 was no go, right? Because of COVID. And so we did kind of a soft presentation in 2022. Yeah, we did a very small, just to kind of test the waters. And then in 2023, we started to kind of bring out a little bit bigger prelude to what it's going to eventually be. So we had, the first part of it was 100 drums on Crenshaw. And so we brought out, because as you know, the community, especially around Leimert Park, drums are an extremely important part of that culture. And so we brought out 100 drums. We brought drums from different cultures. We had drummers from, of course, African drummers who were mostly the type of drummers that are in Leimert Park. We had a Korean drum corps. We invited the Brazilian drums. We invited a bunch of different drummers because we wanted to represent we thought of it as drums being kind of a universal language, the heartbeat sort of the world, and drums in so many cultures represent something very, very spiritual. And because we were coming out of COVID, we wanted something that was healing. We wanted something that spoke a universal language, to the people who would attend. And so we did the 100 drums. That was extremely well. I mean, we had a really, really good turnout. The people who came were very, they came up to us after. That was so healing. It spoke to our community, spoke to who we are, and it was very healing. We also had, we did a light, the Starlight, we're evolving into a Starlight, what we're calling a Starlight Carnival. And which means that all the bands from, as of next year, 2024, all the bands are going to be lit. We want everybody who comes out to have some kind of a light. And so as you go down the street during the dark, you're going to see this just beautiful, procession of lights and dancing and music and drums, and so that's kind of the way that we're going to be doing it. We also plan, and this maybe is in another year or two, we want to have set up on the sides different entertainment stations, because all our cultures, although we have a lot of commonality, we also have differences in just music and food and whatever within our own community. And so we want to be able to have different stations set up along Crenshaw, and so people can really get to experience the Caribbean and LA culture as they go along the Carnival route. And so that's a little bit medium term development. But for now, for next year, you're going to have the 100. I'm sure we're going to have more than 100 drums because there are people who didn't get in. So we're going to have the drum section, then we're going to have the lights, we're going to have masqueraders next year. We didn't bring out our large costumes this past year, but we're going to have all our large on wheels, huge costumes on wheels. I'm getting excited. I'm like,
that's good. That's good. That's good.
So it's going to be exciting. We're starting to work on it already. We have several contingents who have already signed up that they're going to be in it. And so, yeah, we're really excited to get that started.
So what month or what's the date for 2024?
Yeah, we're going to be in June. We haven't quite decided whether or not to go with the date that we had last year. We wanted to collaborate with another event that happens in Leimert Park on the same day. I'm not sure if that worked well or not. So we're going to be speaking with the producers of that event and see if that's something that we should continue to try to make it a kind of a larger kind of joint event, collaborate more. So if we don't do that, then we're probably going to move it to a little bit earlier in June. But we're going to be deciding by maybe the end of December, we should decide, because we're going to start a big launch and different activities in January to lead up to the event.
Oh, so you're going to do some, I'm sorry, go ahead, Chris.
You've mentioned costumes several times. I was a professional swing dancer for film, television, nightclubs, and my clothes, my costume, what was integral and essential to my identity and my expression of artistry and connection with the music. I understand you do a lot of different programs for youth, including costume design. Yes. What's so magical about costumes, and why is it important for young people to learn about this?
Well, costumes, once you get in costume, it transforms you. You whatever you were doing before, whatever, once you get into that costume, it's like something else takes over, and you lose your inhibitions, you lose, it just makes you come alive within that character, within that activity that you're doing. And I find that when I do lots of mini carnivals all over LA County. We do workshops for youth and so on. And once they finish their little headdress and they put it on and they're ready to pose and they're ready for, so you can actually see the impact of it just helping young people to have a sense of owning themselves, of owning what they're doing, owning who they are, and that is a powerful thing to be able to have that shy child who is like afraid to say anything or do anything, and then once they finish their costume and they get it on, it's a whole different ball game, so that to me is something that's really worthwhile to continue to do.
I mean, that's really cool because you're talking about helping the youth and going into schools and preparing their costumes and stuff. How do you feel the impact of, like, say, what you do for the community? How do you think like you guys are really striving, you're making a really good impact on the community?
We are making an impact at this point because let me say this. LA Carnival has been the foundation, has been the training ground for whatever carnivals, Caribbean style carnivals now exist in LA County. All of them came out of working with LA Carnival, every single one of them. And so before LA Carnival, there was no presence of Caribbean style carnival. There's barely any presence of Caribbean culture, although we were here, right? But the visibility of the culture was just not. And so that is one of the legacies of LA Carnival, is that we did the groundwork. We did the pioneering, all the stuff that we went through, and there was a lot. I don't want to, go into all of that unless you want me to, but there was a lot of growth pains. There was a lot of learning. There was a lot of teaching, and so within that, it became where, LA has a carnival. LA did not have a reputation of having any carnival prior to LA Carnival, right? But now we do. And so, as I said, that is something that has been an impact that goes beyond the LA community, and so we're really grateful to have been that force to have been able to make that type of impact. In terms of the schools and so on that we go into, I would say yes, we do have an impact in that we bring knowledge, we bring community spirit, we bring information, we bring a whole way of life that a lot of those kids have never been exposed to. We did a huge workshop in as a school in Mulholland. I can't think of the name right now, but it's this really small private school. And but one of the teachers had been to some Caribbean thing, and he was just so intrigued that he wanted to have the kids experience it. And so we went up and we did the whole day, not the whole day, we did a whole workshop within their classroom that day. And then at the end of the workshop, they had their mask. We did mask workshop. They put on their mask, and we had music, and we took them out into the parking lot, the playground area, and we played the music and had them go around, and they were dancing. And I mean, they just had a great time. And I think that sort of exposure is really priceless in terms of having kids who wouldn't maybe not normally be exposed to this culture do so in a very positive way, that they can be participating as well as just absorbing, So yeah, that's part of what we do, what we think we contribute.
Do you work with elementary, middle school, and high school?
Yes, we work with every level. Yeah,
this level.
Particular school that I just mentioned was a middle school. We work with Crenshaw, we work with Audubon. We've worked with, I can't remember, in UCLA Seeds Elementary, we've done workshops for them. So we do, workshops, different types of workshop, and also for community spaces as well. Just
Okay,
in the community.
that's pretty cool. So let me ask you a question. How do you feel because I know coming from New York, right? We had like Caribbean, the Labor Day Caribbean,
Right.
and
Right.
do you find that the Caribbean community in LA is growing, or is it shrinking? What's it like now for the Caribbean community in Los Angeles? Is it growing? Is it shrinking? Are we making an inroad into the culture and bringing people into our culture, making a splash on the LA scene? What's your take on that?
I believe the community is growing, but it does not grow in the same way as like a New York. Basically, because the layout of the land is so different. We're very spread out here. And so that was part of the challenge, actually, when we just started LA Carnival. That was part of the challenge, is that where is our community? Where our people's at, where are our people? And so we had a hard time, because we had to really find out, going to the Inland Empire, Moreno Valley, into, all the places where you had pockets of Caribbean people, and so that was a challenge. Even now, the community, as I said, it has become much larger than when we just started, but I don't know if we are any more concentrated in any one area. I'm not sure. You do work, in the Caribbean community too, Charles. So I'm not sure what your experience is in terms of where our community is. I'm not sure. I'm not sure where they are, how to actually, what's the most efficient way. We find them eventually, and they find us once they hear about us, but it's not the same as a New York situation or Miami, where we, where the Caribbean folks are, where the Puerto Rican folks are. Here it's a little bit different.
Yeah, you're right. You're absolutely right about that, because they're spread out. They're not concentrate in one area, and that I think that's what makes things difficult when you're doing events to getting the word out. Because we're doing our All Vision Caribbean Latino Film Festival, and one of the things that we're finding out that we're having, people connect, the Caribbean community connecting to our festival has been a little bit of a challenge, So if anyone out there can tell us where the community in LA is located, centralized, I would love to know, because we're finding out it's kind of like pulling teeth just to connect. We're finding that it's actually easier to connect to the Latino community quicker than it is to connect to the Caribbean community.
Well, the Latino community is a larger community by far,
Yes.
So that would be easier. I find that connecting with organizations, Caribbean organizations, is a good way to go. You have, most of the Caribbean countries have some sort of organization, the Barbados Association, Jamaica Awareness, Guyana Medical Relief, and on and on. Friends of Trinidad and Tobago, Citizens and Friends of Trinidad and Tobago. So by connecting with those organizations, they sort of have probably the most impactful kind of on the pulse of their community. Now, once we get to those organizations, then we start to kind of see where people are. If you go to, like, I think last night was a Jamaica Awareness Association event. I couldn't make it because I was having this head cold and I knew I had this interview today. But when you go to that event, you have, 300 or 400 people who are either from the Jamaican, community or affiliated in some way, friends of the Jamaican community. And so that's a good way to connect with those organizations. To connect with our community. The other way that I find works is to just go to different events that are affiliated in some way with the Caribbean. You know, there are, like the Pan-African Film Festival, sometimes they'll have, you know, Caribbean films. And so you go and you kind of try to network and, you know, see. So it's a challenge, and you have to kind of develop some sort of a strategy in terms of where you're going to go and how you're going to connect and keep those connections. It's not just getting the connections, but it's keeping those connections until, and keep them engaged throughout the time until your event. Because, you know, our folks, they're not easily impressed. It's really hard to have an impact on our community. They're like, oh yeah, right, you know. So,
yeah.
you know?
Believe me, I know, because I've been trying. I work with the Haitian International Film Festival. Which is a really good film festival, but you know, sometimes it's hard to try to get people to come out, you know, and they have really good films. And it's really hard to connect to our community because, like you said, we're not easily impressed, you know,
Yes.
but it's not talking about impression though. It's actually about supporting your community, you know, because there's really great gems in those videos, in those films. If you go and you support, you'll find that, oh wow, I didn't know this exists. Oh wow, this is really good. But it takes you also, it takes the listener and the people in the community to be engaged, you know? It can't be all of us, you know, oh, I have this carnival, come out. You know, you need to come out. You need to support these things because these things are good and it helps build a really good foundation for our community and other communities to see that we are functioning culture. We have art, you know, we have music, we have filmmakers, musicians, everything is there within the Caribbean community that other people could come and appreciate. You know, that's what I try to, especially during this film festival. That's what I'm trying to project. That there's a tapestry. There's a really rich um, artists out there that's willing to share their work with you. You know.
Well, as you go into these events or into these activities, it is really, as we both said, you know, challenging. So like for LA Carnival, I decided that from the very first time I started LA Carnival, like I said, the name was one thing, right? I didn't want to just segment ourselves because I already know it's going to be Caribbean. There's no other way.
True.
So the content is going to be Caribbean no matter what we call it, right? So I said, why not open it up so that other people will not feel intimidated, not necessarily intimidated, but will feel like, oh, it's not for me, it's not about me, it's not something that has to do with me. And so even this iteration of LA Carnival that we have relaunched in Leimert Park, we had to be conscious of the community in which we are operating, right? Because if we are not speaking a language that the people of the community understand, they're not going to participate. That happened to us in Westchester, right? We were there for 17 years. We hardly got any support from our participation from the Westchester community. They didn't come out. Right? I remember one of the last events we did an art walk, and they were concerned that we were going to be blocking their sidewalks and whatever, you know. So I'm like, huh? Yeah. So I'm like, it's an art walk. We have done the homework. We know the width of the sidewalk. We know what we need to leave for people to pass, you know. Anyway, so after the event happened, we have to give a report. And so I went into the office and we were talking. So the young lady I was speaking to said, oh, I drove by and saw what you were doing. So I'm like, oh, you drove by? Why didn't you stop? Why didn't you park your car and come out and see? Oh, well, she didn't have an answer, right? But it's that kind of a sort of attitude, you know, of some community members that never sees us as anything more than foreigners, never sees us as anything more than the other. And so they're not willing to engage with us. And it's not just us as Caribbeans, almost any immigrant community has that same kind of challenge in terms of interacting with the larger community. And so our approach to it is to include or involve in some way, find out what can we do that will not harm our initial or our sort of basic activity, but can also invite other people in. Right? And as I said, part of what I realized is that we're going to be doing our carnival. We're going to be Caribbean people going down the street, but if we add something or if we allow a way for other communities to participate, then, oh, this is an interesting, I did a workshop for the city of West Hollywood. They gave us a grant and we did a workshop in their facility, right? And so we noticed that there are a lot of women. Well, the majority of the people who came to the workshop were these kind of middle-aged white women. And I was like, that's interesting. And as we got to talking, they were so enthusiastic about doing the headpieces. So I'm like, great. But I'm in the back of my mind, I'm curious as to what is it about this that is so interesting to them. By the end of the workshop, we found out that there's a festival of Purim, I'm not even sure how to say it, that they had coming up like in 2 weeks. That headdress wasn't for Carnival. It was for their festival. So I was like, oh, okay. No, that makes sense, because I was like curious. I didn't kind of think these were the typical sort of carnival going individuals, but no, they had their own festival. And this workshop, this headpiece, they always have headpieces in that particular festival. And so this was an opportunity for them to make their headpieces, right? So just to say, until you put out what you're doing, until you try to connect, until you allow, not even so much try, but provide opportunities where people can engage and connect. You never know who is out there and how they're going to connect with what you're doing that you think is just Caribbean or just anyway.
But what I realized from that story that you just told is like, we have to have an interest in it. I have to have something in it for me, right? Yes. So those women attended the workshop because it was something in it for them.
It was definitely, yeah. And something that we didn't know about, but they knew,
That's the key right there. What is it? What's in it for me, right? That's the key. That's the key right there. What's in it for me?
Do you mind if I get my phone out and video this? I need to get this right.
Go on, my brother.
It's what's in it for me. And so let me just ask you, because we began with your, going to UCLA and, going into film. At some point, do you miss any part of filmmaking at any point? Were you trying to be a director, first of all? Were you trying to be like a director? That's why you study film and television. Do you want to be a writer, director? What part of the industry did you see yourself when you first started?
I didn't know enough about the industry really to kind of figure out what part exactly. I know I wanted to make some films. I came from, as I mentioned, a theater background. I did my bachelor's in theater production. And so that was kind of more aligned with what I had been doing before in terms of as a young child and as a young adult growing up. But to say, I kind of discovered my writing ability, or my teachers discovered that I had some writing ability, because again, at UCLA, I was the only Black person in most of my classes. And I went in as an focus on acting. However, within the 3 years that I was in the theater department, I realized that I hadn't I hadn't gotten cast in maybe one project, right? And that is a huge part. If you're an actor, you got to do work acting, right? But I never got cast in anything. And so coming to the end of my time in the theater department, I was like, oh, damn, I'm not going to graduate, or I'm not going to have enough units. And so I went to one of the teachers and I said, well, what do I do? And she said, well, Marie, you're a really good writer. So I'm like, oh, okay. I always loved writing. I always was writing little stories. I actually, when I was in high school, I used to write stories and sell them. I used to make up these, used to make up these little stories, and I would make them in like episodes. And so they would have to pay me 10 cents or whatever it was at the time to get the next episode. And so I know I should be doing that right now. So anyway, so my teacher said, you're a pretty good writer. So do you think you can do something, writing? So I'm like, I don't know. I came into to do something else. Anyway, I kind of had no choice. So I said, okay. So I designed sort of a individualized program where I did a lot of writing. I wrote scripts, I wrote, a lot of stuff in order to get my credits. So I actually put one of my teachers, Cynthia Mandelberg is her name. I think she changed her last name, but she actually saw one of my screenplays, and she said, you should put this. They had a award named the Samuel Goldwyn Award. It's a very sort of prestigious award. And so she said, you should put this in the Samuel Goldwyn Award. And I'm like, it's not even done. And it's in Jamaican language and they're not going to understand it. And I went on and on. And it's not finished and I have to rewrite it. And I had 1,000,001 excuses. And she says, no, just put it in. It's really good. So I'm like, well, I don't know. Anyway, she did it. She actually put the the piece into the competition. And although it was unfinished, I won second place, right?
Nice.
And so I was like, that kind of opened my eyes a bit. It's like, oh, that's cool, And so I got my little, I think it was $5,000, which was like a ton of money to me at the time. I got my little $5,000 and I was like, oh God, this is great. So then the following year, when I was in my production major of the film and television program, I kept writing screenplays. And so there was another competition named the Nicol Screenwriting Fellowship, which is a very, very big thing, right? And so I put one of my screenplays, the same one that won the Goldwyn, I put it in, and I cleaned it up, of course, and then put it into the Nicol Screenwriting Fellowship. And to my glee, I was selected as one of the winners. There were 5 people. And so I won. I was like, oh my God, this is just like, whoa. But then I got a letter from the Academy saying that because I was not fully graduated, I hadn't really graduated, they couldn't give me the award because it wasn't for students. So I was about just like devastated. So they took it back. But then this gentleman, wow. I forgot his name is Mr. Chandler. He called me, and I think he was one of the judges. He called me and he said, I don't know you personally, but I just want you to know that your work was, if not the best, among the best that was submitted. So I want you to resubmit it next year. I want you to promise that you're going to resubmit this work. And so I promised I would resubmit, and I resubmitted, and I won again. I was like,
nice.
So I got the Nicol Screenwriting Fellowship. I won twice, only got one, and at the time that one was $20,000. Can you imagine me in college getting a $20,000 fellowship? I was like, whoa. I went off on a tangent to answer your question, but in terms of what my focus was, or what interested me in the industry. I didn't have a clear vision, but sometimes I say, my art and my calling sort of found me, because I was always open to exploring and to, finding out different things about, whether it's a industry or whatever. So having those kind of encouragements, let's say, but I wanted to make films, because I felt like films would really have a bigger impact than just doing theater work. And I wanted to show aspects of my culture. I wanted to show aspects of who I am and what I bring to the world. And so that was what that's my answer.
Do you think that you would love one of your scripts to be directed by some young up and coming director?
Absolutely. I wrote a script. The script I wrote during my fellowship year with the Academy. There's a story in Jamaica around a woman who lived around in the early, probably late 1800s. Her name is Annie Palmer, and she's known as, quote, the White Witch of Rose Hall. That's a very intriguing story. So I wrote a script. There are a couple of books, I think, that are based on her life, or what people perceive her life to be. But that script, I would love for it to be directed. I don't want to direct it, but I'd love for that script to come to life. And also the one I wrote that it won the Golden Award. That one is a more personal story. And I was actually asked if I would rewrite the story and set it in the South with a white character. And I was like, yeah, they were bold enough to ask me that. So I'm like, but it's okay. You can hire me to write the one you want to write, but this one is no. So yeah, I'm open to that.
So man. I actually got my MFA in film and television from UCLA, and when I was researching your background, I immediately recognized your myriad award wins, as well as the significance and competitive nature. After winning the Nicole Fellowship and the Goldwyn Award, did it open any doors for you as a writer? Did you get an agent? Did you get any cool meetings?
I got some cool letters. And whether it opened doors for me or not, I'm not sure if I didn't get any significant results from that. But I feel that half of that is probably on me in terms of pursuing and following up and that kind of thing. I felt that I got letters, but once they saw the script, they were no longer interested, because the predominant response that I got was they didn't know what to do with it. It didn't fit in any of the categories that they could market. They couldn't do anything with it. So that was the most prominent response that I got. I did not get an agent. I did not get invited to any, the people who were also in my cohort of Nicole Fellows, a lot of them have gone on to have very productive writing careers. And as I said, that was partly on me, but partly the kind of nature of the industry at that time as well.
Wow. This have been a really great educational interview. I really appreciate it. And just getting back to the festival, what do you hope for the future of the festival? What would you like it, the legacy, and what would you want the festival to be about going forward?
I would like it to be about humanity, about the commonality of us as human beings. We all want to be safe. We all want to be in a position or an environment that is healing. We want to be in an environment that is joyful. And whatever I can do in my work, and in particular with the LA Carnival, I would like those to be some of the things that we are able to do. Learning about our culture, that's going to come just by people participating. And so if I think about how do we get people to participate, I think of the what's in it for me thing. What is the viewer, what is a participant going to get out of it, apart from just coming and dancing, which is fine to come just to dance and have fun. But I would like it to be an event that on an annual basis draws people because they know it's a safe event that is healing and that speaks to our humanity as one family.
Nice, nice. Usually at the end of our interviews, we always ask the participant, what advice would you give to young people that have dreams and either in filmmaking, in art, want to be some sort of creator? What advice would you have for the young?
I would say the most important thing is to start. Start. If you want to be a writer, start writing. If you want to make films, find a way. Nowadays you have no excuse. Right? You have a camera, you have your tool in your hand all the time. Find a little story that you can make. Find something that you can document that is going to be a film. There are myriads of editing programs that are free. Start doing whatever it is that your passion is, because nobody is going to come and invite you to pursue your passion. You have to let your passion show, and then you will get support. So don't be afraid to start and to let you put your work out there.
Cool. So if people wanted to find out more about the festival, what's like, do you have a website, Instagram? How would they learn more about your festival?
Yeah, we have a website, is www.losangelescarnival.com. And I think our Instagram is at LA Carnival. But we primarily right now working on our website. From our website, we've been getting a lot of people actually joining Carnival through our website, which is great. And as we roll out, because now we're revamping some of the stuff, having moved from Westchester to Leimert Park. We're very, very excited about being in Leimert Park and working with that community and bringing in different elements of different cultures that is all connected to either African diaspora or the Latin Caribbean diaspora. And so we're very excited to have those connections happen in the Leimert Park iteration of LA Carnival.
Cool. I want to thank you for coming on the show. I really appreciate you giving us our time. I learned a lot, and I look forward to having you back on the show. It was really great. Really great.
Thank you so much. Thank you
so much, Marie. Really appreciate it listening to all you had to share.
Thank you so much for having me on.
This episode is brought to you by Our Vision Caribbean and Latino Film Festival 2025 edition. Submit your film today. Go to Film Freeway or visit the website at www.our-vision.org.